Hello and welcome back to part 2 of this little video mini-series on how we're going to model a raspberry in Maya. So I've done a little bit of testing while I've been away, trying to find the best way to make a raspberry. I'd initially planned that we'd just do it manually, like we'd place them all, and then I was thinking that seems a little bit silly because we can do that slightly more procedurally with this great plugin for Maya called Mesh. I think by default that might not always be enabled. So if that's the case and you don't have anything, if you don't have this Mesh tab here, go to Windows, Settings and Preferences, and then Plugin Manager, and then just type in Mesh, and then that should show that up here, and you just click Loaded and then Auto Load, so that loads every time you open up Maya. Just to quickly show you that again, you come up to Windows up here, Settings and Preferences, then Plugin Manager, and just search for Mesh. And like we finished off in the last video, I have gone ahead and made 3 separate little bits. We didn't know what these were called last time. Turns out they have a name. They're called druplets, I think. I heard about this from another video. I looked it up. Apparently raspberries are not even true berries. The more you know, exciting berry facts. But yeah, these are called druplets. So we have 3 of our druplets here, and looking closer at the reference, something that I noticed is that there's like, on some of them, not always, there's like this little groove, or this like crease that goes down the side of your berry, or druplet. So I'm going to quickly go ahead and add that to ours, to mine here. And because these are quite low poly, that's really, really simple for us to do. We're just going to go ahead, select these edges, pull those down a bit. And then I think maybe not so much. Pull that back up. Select these, just like so, and pull those in just so that holds that edge a little bit more. And yeah, there we go. We have a little bit of a crease, and then I'll just go ahead and add that to the other 2. Sorry, can't count today apparently. Just like so. Pull that in. Because I think this will just add like a nice little bit of extra detail. You might not always see it, but from the right angle when the light hits, it could look quite nice. So, and a lot of the time when you're making a model, you know, especially if you're trying to go for realism, it's like these little touches that kind of add to it, and it all builds up. You might not think it would make too much of a difference to begin with, but all these things add up, make something look far more realistic than if you didn't, right? Because otherwise they're just like some misshapen spheres. And then everything else combined, like the shaders and things that we'll get into later, will help with that too. So these are our druplets. Before we go ahead and use Mesh to create our object, and that might sound just like not make any sense to you whatsoever, don't worry, I'll explain. There's a few things we need to do first. Because of how Mesh works, it's going to randomly distribute our druplets onto something. In that case, a mesh. So I went ahead in testing and made this. I just kind of lined it up somewhat to our reference. It's kind of like a strawberry shape, I guess. They look almost kind of like bigger blown up strawberries, right? So I kind of just went and made this shape. Doing kind of like stuff like this in Maya, honestly, I don't think it's the best software for it, but this is a tutorial on how you could do it in Maya, or at least how I would do it in Maya. I would probably recommend that you do this instead in Blender using the geometry nodes. I'm not too familiar with that, but I've seen people make these with geometry nodes. It's probably a lot better than that. But if you do, for whatever reason, need to make your raspberry in Maya, this, as far as I can tell, is one of the best and quickest ways to do it. So I'll quickly remake this guy. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and create our guide shape here. This will be what I found works best. Is if you make a 12 by 12 sphere, and then we'll just come to our side view here, line this up with the reference, kind of scale it up like this, like so, till it sort of matches on the side. Then we're going to go into our soft select again. We're going to like press B to enable that after selecting a vertex. Then to change the scale of the how much influence the soft select has on the object, hold down B, and then drag your middle mouse to the right to increase and to the left to decrease. Just going to scale that up a good amount so it's got most of it in there. And we'll just increase that like that. Just so we kind of have the shape. Something like this. Scale that a bit more up on the top. There we go. Something like that. Okay, then once we've got that shape, we're going to go ahead and kill all the transforms. Sorry, not the scale. We are going to just kill these, and then we're going to go ahead and freeze these. Come up to modify, and then freeze transformations. Then, oh, I seem to have messed up some of the alignment of the edges here. I'll just fix that quickly. Okay, then what I found works best after doing this is if you just go ahead and add some more edge loops in the middle from here. We're going to go ahead and use the multi-cut tool. You can go to the modeling toolkit, then multi-cut. Then if you just hold down Control and then middle mouse click, that'll put that perfectly in the center. So we're just going to do that for each of these, like so. Then we are, to even this out so it's not so blocky, we're going to use something called the Edit Edge Flow tool. You just hold down Shift, right click to get to that. That's basically going to average out the edge between the previous two, so you can see it's like making it a lot smoother here. And then to repeat that, we'll just select each one and then press G on the keyboard. That will, in Maya, repeat any action that you've just done until we have this nice and smoothed out, like so. Okay, and now that we have our base mesh, we can go ahead and start using this to create our mesh network. Okay, so we've got our guide. I'm going to go ahead and actually rename that guide. That's just like something good to do. Make sure your outline is nice and clean, rename things. Otherwise you end up having a million different objects with like similar names and it just gets a bit hectic. What's important to do before we start doing mesh is make sure that all your druplets are centered on the grid with their transforms frozen. Okay, so if they're out here like this, then just make sure that you go ahead and zero all those off. I would have the crease side facing up in this direction so that the length is sort of pointed towards X, like this. I've just found that works the best whenever when we're doing this in the experimentation that I've done trying to make this in Maya. Then once that's set up, we're ready to go ahead and start using mesh. So what I'll do is we will select these three here, come up to mesh, and then just press that, and then that has just extended them all along the grid kind of evenly. This is a start, but what we're going to want to do is you come over to your attribute editor, come over to the distribute node. We're going to change the distribution type from linear to mesh. Okay, this is where our guide comes in handy. We're going to middle mouse click that and drag that over to input mesh. And you can see now what that's done is it's put our seeds on our shape, on our guide. What we want to do though, instead of having the method as scatter, we want to change that to vertex. Okay, then what you can see that's doing there is it's just placing them on the vertices instead. Okay, so if we increase that to about 100, you can see it's already starting to look a bit more like a raspberry. We have a few extra ones up here that we don't need, right? We have 4 extra, like I said earlier, so we're just going to reduce this to 96. Okay, so we're a bit of the ways there. We've got a few gaps, but it's starting to look a bit more like a raspberry, and we didn't have to place them all by hand. Okay. One thing you may have noticed, for those of you paying extra special attention, is this is all the same druplet, which is not what we want because we made 3. So to fix that, there's a node. If we come along to mesh, and that is called ID. We're just going to just click that and then click Add ID node. That will pick. You can see here under ID count it says 3, so let's say we had 6 of these, it would say 6. It automatically figures that out depending on how many you selected to begin with, right? And because we selected all 3 of ours, we've got 3 under the ID count. The ID type is just kind of how it decides which one to pick. So linear would be like, if you imagine, you know, you had the 3 druplets lined up along a ruler, it would go in order of like 1, 2, 3, then 1, 2, 3 again, and so on. What we're looking for is random, because then that's just randomly going to generate which one's which. I like to change the random seed a bit, otherwise I feel like it looks a bit too uniform, and then there we go. You can see we're getting all of our druplets. Okay, so that's looking a little bit better. Next thing we can do, just to break this up even more, is if we come back to our mesh node and add a random node. Okay, now don't worry, that's exploded it, like completely killed and mushed our raspberry, but what we're going to do is adjust some of these values. So by default, it's got 1 in all the position X, Y, Z. Just kill that off, drag that back to 0. So we're our default state. You want to sort of do this. It depends what you're doing, but in our case, we don't want this to be too extreme. So we'll just put something like a 0.1 to start with in each of these. And as you can see, what that's doing is it's just slightly offsetting things. Okay, just making things look slightly different. So I might increase that to like 0.25, something like that, just to get a bit more variation. Maybe 0.2. Okay, then we can also do the same with the rotation. So you can see that's adding a bit of extra variation there for us. Okay, and now it's looking a bit more random, but you can see we have a lot of them intersecting here. So this isn't a 100% perfect method. Honestly, if anyone knows a better way to do this in Maya, please do tell me. I was not really able to find that many tutorials on how to do this in Maya. That's one of the reasons why we wanted to make this tutorial as well on a Raspberry, is because doing this is kind of difficult. There's not that many tutorials on making this fruit in the first place, let alone in Maya. So that's why I figured I would try and tackle this. And believe me, I did quite a bit of prep before doing this video to try and figure out how to do this. And it's a bit finicky. So, you know, if it doesn't work 100% for you, please do leave a comment. If you want, I can have a look at your scene, send that to me. Whatever you want to do, and I can message back and we can try and figure out why it's not working for you. But this, I think, is looking okay. I'm going to maybe reduce some of the rotation in Y a little bit, because I sort of want them to follow the shape of the guide a bit more. But once we have this, I'm pretty happy with how that's looking. So what I am going to go ahead and do now is to get this mesh detached from mesh, because we don't need mesh anymore. I'm just going to press Control D on the keyboard with it selected, and that gives us a fresh piece of geo that you can see if I go along here. It doesn't have any of the mesh inputs, so we're just going to go ahead and hide these for the time being. You could go ahead and delete them. I'm not going to, because it's entirely possible this could go wrong, and I might need them again. But you won't see that because I'll edit it out. We're going to go ahead and hide the guide as well. So you can see we kind of have, if you squint your eyes, something that's looking a little bit more like a raspberry. In not that much time either, right? I think I've only been recording for maybe 15 minutes or so, and we've done this pretty quick. There's a few problems though, as you can probably see down here. This looks pretty messed up. If you saw this raspberry in a container, you wouldn't buy this, and I don't blame you, because this doesn't look good. This is where some of the manual tweaking is going to have to come in, but I think Mash, you know, it has helped us get most of the way there. So what I'm going to start off by doing is just pulling some of these out, because you could also delete some of these, but I might use some of these to fill in these holes up here. If you're not sure how I'm doing this on a whole mesh, if you just go to object mode, hold down right click, go to face, and then double click any of the faces on one of these, and then that will just select that whole piece. And then, you know, this is still a whole object, right? If you imagine it's just like grouped together, but not combined. I'm just pulling these out to kind of just reduce some of this mass here. I think the way Mash is... because of the way we did it, where it's distributing it on vertices on our guide, obviously as you get to the bottom of our guide, there's more vertices, you know, things get in a bit like tighter, so it's going to have like just a bunch of excess stuff down here that we don't want. We can probably delete a lot of these. This is probably not your usual tutorial for modeling, but sometimes this is just kind of what you have to do in Maya. It's a bit of a beast. It doesn't always work the best, but we're starting... I'm going to start deleting some of these. We're starting to clear out some of this excess. I apologize, this scene is getting very chaotic very quickly, but I promise you, you know, just do what I'm doing here. Clear out some of these and we'll get there. probably don't need that one. Or that one. Or this one in there. Okay, that's looking a little bit better. So what I'll do is, just to plug in some of the gaps that we have up here, is I'll just move some of these up here. And if you weren't sure how I was like snapping that to the model, when you come to move this, if you just hold down V on the keyboard, I believe it is by default, then drag over, and that will just snap to any sort of like vertice mouse over. Then I am just going to place some of these in here to fill in these gaps, and you can always like move some of these and scale them a bit, because as far as I can tell, looking at raspberries, they don't really have gaps like this, but our funky Maya raspberry does, so we have to plug the holes for it because Maya doesn't know how. Okay, let's get some of those in there like that. Then, you know, it's a little bit tedious, but unfortunately quite necessary. And then this way, you know, we won't have to do this all entirely by hand. Believe me, I've been there and done that while modeling a strawberry. I could not get the Blender nodes to work. Sorry, I was trying to do it in Blender with geometry nodes. I could not get it to work for the life of me. So I ended up having to place all the seeds manually in Maya. As you can imagine, there's quite a lot of seeds on a strawberry, and I nearly went crazy after doing that. So please, for the love of God, don't do that. I would not recommend it if you value your sanity. So we're just filling in some of the gaps here. And then maybe with some of these instead, what we can do is we can just kind of push these around a bit, just to fill in those gaps. Maybe scale up a few. You know, and I wouldn't be too worried about scaling some of these. Like, if you look at a raspberry, they're kind of just all over the place, to be honest. Like anything natural, like we said, just has so much, like, variety to it. It's very rarely that something looks perfect. Unless you've seen those, like, crazy crystals that somehow come out like cubes. I have no idea how nature does that. I guess that's the one exception to the rule. But not in our case here. So we'll just do this. And don't worry about these intersections. We're going to go ahead and fix that up in quite a cool way, I think, in a bit, with some tools that has been added to Maya somewhat recently, I think. I was using Maya 2022 for a while, but then changed to 2024 because it's got some cool features in it. If you haven't already upgraded to 2024, I recommend that you do. And you'll find out why in a bit. So, nearly filled in a lot of these gaps here. Just place a few more of these. Something like this. You'll get this a lot of time when you're modeling, you know. It's sometimes it really can be tedious. There is a lot now, fortunately, these days to help you speed up your workflow. But sometimes you just have to get in there and, you know, there's no other option, really. You just got to do it yourself. I've had to do that a lot, working at various different studios. Sometimes, you know, like they choose the Maya version for you. I remember doing things in like Maya 2016. And, you know, it can get very tedious. Let's, placing another one, let's just put that there and scale that up a bit. Same with this one. I think we are just about there. Take this one, scale that guy up a bit. Okay, that looks good to me. So we can go ahead, just delete the rest of these. Okay, and as you can see, we now have something that looks quite a bit more like a raspberry. Let me just fix this guy, because he's standing out a little bit too much. There we go. Something that looks quite a lot more like a raspberry. Okay, we've got some nice randomness going on. The only thing that's bothering me, and that you might have noticed, is we have these kind of gross looking intersections like this. No. Okay? No good. Depends how far away we're going to look at it, but like we're trying to make a pretty realistic looking raspberry, or as best we can here in Maya. So we are going to do something that I never used to like to do, and I think is quite scary, called booleans. They are, a lot of the time I avoid them because they just suck. They can be really, really useful for like quickly concepting things out. You know, if you want to punch a hole in something or join something, it works really well. But the topology just becomes horrendous. You then need to go fix it, and you know, all sorts of weird things can happen. So I like to avoid them like the plague. But in this case, they're going to be quite useful for us. I'm just going to pull this guy up so it's sitting like that. Oh, we've got another gap here. Probably take a bit more time than I am to fill in the gaps and make your Raspberry look quite nice. Just for the sake of the tutorial, I'm going to leave it like this, I think. Okay, so we're going to select our entire object, okay? Hold down Shift, right-click. Oh, actually, no, before we do that, sorry. This shows how little I use Booleans. We are going to have to separate all of these into separate objects. This could take a while, depending on how good your computer is. It doesn't take that long for me. But don't worry, it will eventually finish. If you hold down space, go to mesh, then click separate. That's now given us all individual objects. If we open up that group, you can see now we have all 80 we ended up having in total of our druplets. Okay, so we have all our separate druplets, so we're going to go ahead and select all of those, hold down Shift, right click, and then go to Boolean and Union. So that'll take a little bit, probably not too long. It depends on your computer specs. Doesn't take too long for me normally. There we go. So that's all combined. It keeps the history, but what we want to do is just select all of this and then go to Edit, delete all my type history. Then that will give us one fused object. But what you can see is the topology is disgusting. There are just vertices connecting willy-nilly. All sorts of gross n-gons like this. Look at this, just absolutely terrible. We can't use this for anything. Oh, that's actually awful. But don't worry, this is a multi-step process now to fix this up. So just make sure before you do any of this at every stage, go ahead and delete all by type history, okay? Because otherwise it's just going to slow this down. We'll go ahead and give this a save because Maya likes to crash sometimes. We're going to hold down Shift again. Shift and right click, go to remesh, and then just let that do its thing. Normally doesn't take too long. What that's going to do, as you can see here, is it's given us a triangulated mesh, but it has cleaned up everything. So we don't have any kind of gross looking n-gons or anything like that anymore. And then we can use this as a base to now, we'll just go ahead and delete history again, retopologize. This came in, I think, properly with my 2024. But it's really great just to, like, especially for organic stuff like this, not so much for hard surface. For organic stuff, if we just hold down Shift and right click again, come over to retopologize and just release on this box so we can get the settings. What I found that seems to work best for this is I'm going to change my face count to about 5,000. That's just how many polys you're going to have. We want this to be quite realistic, high resolution. Then change topology regularity and face uniformity to 1, and then for preserve, change or tick hard edges on, and then that's going to, you know, keep these nice like creases in here, because when you look at a Raspberry, you know, it's not particularly lumpy. If we didn't turn this off, it would look like it was melting. So leave all those on, keep that selected, and then just hit retopologize. This can take a little bit. For me, it can take a couple minutes, 10 minutes sometimes, depending on how complicated the object is. This could take a little bit, but don't worry, just let Maya do its thing, go away, grab a coffee, get a snack or something, come back, and it should be done. So I'm going to go ahead, pause the recording, and we'll come back when that's finished. Okay, so Maya has just finished retopologizing this. You can see there are still a few little bits and bobs, and it looks kind of weird right now, but you can see it's given us all these like nice quads. If I just come over and hold down space, mesh display, and then soften edge, you can see now we have this nice fused mesh that's all quads. We'll just go ahead and smooth that. And that is our Raspberry model done, or at least most of it. There still are a little bit of holes, but honestly, I don't mind that too much. For the most part, it's all fused together. And yeah, that's about it. What we'll go into next time is there are like these little, I don't know what to call them. I think they're called like stamen or something like that come out of the seeds. We'll look into how to add those. Little like fuzz, like peach fuzz that you get on all of the druplets. And then later on we'll get into doing the shading, so stay tuned for the next part, and hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions at all, if something wasn't working for you, please leave a comment. We read all the comments. We'll get back to you in the next video with any questions you have. But yeah, thanks for watching. See you later.